Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to a Fresh Stories book chat, book corner, book talk. We still haven't decided on a name, but we're just going to go with it. We have Melissa here today. Melissa, can you introduce yourself?
Oh gosh, how? My name's Melissa Petro. I am author of Shame on You: How to Be a Woman in the Age of Mortification. It is my story and the stories of 150 plus other, mostly women, on how this pernicious emotion affects our daily lives and experience shame.
I like the word pernicious. That was good. That's a good way to explain that. Okay. I have so many questions for you. First of all, where did the idea to cover this particular emotion come about for your book?
I love that question. It took about 2 years for me to translate my memoir, my personal story, into what I call prescriptive nonfiction, self help,
Yep.
and make it about a subject larger than just myself, which memoir naturally is. But my agent, who did not represent memoirs, was like, I love your story. I love you. I want to work with you. How can we make this not memoir? Like, I don't know. Like, what's the larger container? What is
Mm,
my story about? And I couldn't put a finger on it. At some point, she was like, seems like you've dealt with a lot of shame and shaming in your life. And no, 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 that's not it. And I mean, it goes back to this idea of it being a very pernicious emotion. It's
yeah.
ubiquitous. It's so all pervasive, and yet it really is hard to name. We don't think we're struggling with shame. We just think we could do better and be better. But that actually is what shame is all about.
Shame is such a shadow, right? I feel like we carry it with us. I'm thinking about, in particular, I do a lot of obviously divorce work, and I constantly tell people there's still so much shame with divorce, right? And
Right.
people still don't believe me. And I'm like, you got it's an undercurrent. So I would love for you to take us through the book. Like what was your story that you turned into this book that's about shame, which is really important. Where did that begin?
Right. So when I was 19 years old, I was living as a student abroad in Oaxaca, Mexico, and my credit card hit its limit around the same time I ran out of cash. And around that same time, I got a tattoo, my very first. And the guy who gave me the tattoo was like, "Hey, do you want to make some money?" And I was like, "Yes." So I started working as a stripper in Mexico. And I did that off and on. And then I worked very briefly as a call girl on Craigslist. And I got out of the industry just as easily as I had gotten into it,
Mhm.
which is not the case for everyone. I just always felt, this was something that made me different. Again, didn't have that language, didn't know that, this is like cross culturally shamed to
Yeah.
be a woman with experiences in the sex trades. I carried that for a long time until I started to really write about my experience and make meaning and share my story, which is how we really ultimately recover from shame. Is we start talking about those things we fear make us in some way different, in some way deviant, and not different in a good way.
Yeah.
In some way we're set apart, and we're it what things that are shameful fundamentally threaten our feeling of belonging. So, and this was something I carried for a long time. And then 10 years later, my worst fears came true when I was publicly humiliated on the cover of the New York Post. By then, I had become a public school teacher. I was sober in a program of recovery. And none of that really mattered because to them, I was a dirty hooker who, had somehow tricked the Department of Education into hiring me. So I went through a protracted battle for my career and ultimately lost. And I had more information really about how shame and shaming functions in our society and really keeps women from achieving our goals and knowing our worth. Or it can if we can't, develop some sort of resilience to it.
How did that happen with the New York Post?
Well, I had written an article. I
Okay.
wrote a 900-word op-ed in the Huffington Post admitting that I had experiences in the sex trades. It was in defense then of the Craigslist erotic services section, so they were shutting it down
Yeah.
because it was viewed as endangering and exploiting women. And I just shared my experience that I freely exploited myself.
Yep. Yep.
And that for some, people have sex for different reasons. And sometimes for some of us, one reason is money. And that was my experience. And that was where I did it. And
Mhm.
there was really nothing that could have stopped me from doing it. And it was, you know,
Yeah.
just sort of normalizing a normal experience. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not everyone's experience, but it's not deviant in the way our society really labels it. Kind of like
No.
divorce or a lot of the experiences that we think of as tainted, or it makes us in some way less than or a
Yeah.
failure,
Yeah.
just in some way we're not like the others.
Yeah.
Well, it's not really true because there's actually a lot of people who share that experience,
Right.
and it's not necessarily a reflection on an individual's character.
Well, there's so much to unpack here because first of all, sex work is the oldest profession, right?
Right?
So that is been around forever. That's how women have made money. And I talk about this a lot. I just posted this on Threads the other day. There's sex work, quote unquote, in suburban homes too. That
Well, now I'm a stay-at-home mom, or I had
mhm,
become a stay-at-home
mhm,
mom by the time I was writing the book, and that came with its own, like, nonstop shaming. I mean, you
mhm.
really can't get it right, and
No.
yes, stay-at-home moms or wives,
Right.
housewives are
Yep.
often compared. It's often seen as transactional, and
Mhm.
and and again, people have sex for different reasons,
Right.
and that's really, nothing that can be legislated or protected from.
No, and there's no shame about that, right? Like you're owning it. You're owning your
Right.
story. Can you talk a little bit about how shame keeps us small?
Right. So again, it's this thing we try to avoid knowing even up to ourselves, because it threatens us on such a primitive level.
Yeah.
To believe that we are fundamentally flawed and potentially incapable of belonging, we need to belong. Like,
Yeah.
no matter how, like,
Yeah.
badass you are and you think, "Oh, I'm, too cool for that." We do care.
Yeah.
We do care what other people think. We care whether or not, we all on some, like, deep, deep level want to be loved. And so we, as a way of avoiding rejection, we hide the things we feel ashamed of, or the things we could be potentially shamed for. It's called a concealable stigmatized identity. If there's a fact about you that's not visual,
Mm.
and if it's going to be stigmatized, you just don't reveal it. It's pretty strategic, right? But it can be very affecting because we
Interesting.
end up not being our true selves, and it can inhibit our creativity. It can keep us from really finding our
Yeah.
people because we're not living our truth. We're just conforming to what we think people want us to be.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it can really distort our sense of self in a way where we don't know our truth because we don't even feel safe to explore it within our own brain.
Yeah. Totally. Totally. So take us through the book. If somebody is thinking about picking it up, who is this book for? What is the journey of this it's a self-help book, right? About shame, right? So like self-help slash memoir-ish, right? So
Right.
what is the take us through what this book looks like?
So I really did try to tell my own story and use that as a sort of understanding of how it could impact us in these ways, really large,
Mhm.
like public shaming or
Yeah.
mass media humiliation, and really small. And I speak to other women, so my experience is different. The shame I felt being publicly humiliated on the cover of a newspaper is not that different than the shame I feel as a mom when I burn my kid's waffle, or I show up at school and I haven't
Mm.
done the paperwork
Right.
they're
Right.
expecting me to. It's that same feeling.
Right.
So if we can really investigate that feeling with curiosity rather than a sort of repulsion,
Mm.
then we can begin to understand how it operates in our lives. So I really do look at, the ways we fight, flee, fawn,
Mhm.
and the way it can just freeze us and
Yeah.
incapacitate us. It's not unlike, those traumatic responses we have, because it really does hit us on that level where it really can impact us so gravely that we'll do anything to avoid it. But paradoxically, when we meet it with curiosity, when we share our own stories and we're met with acceptance and a safe container, how we go about finding those places and those people. That's all about what happens in the second half of the book, and how I rescued myself from
Mm.
the grips of shame and found a sort of narrative that I could live with. It wasn't like I try not to overcompensate. I'm not like entirely proud of my history, but I'm not ashamed of it either. Um, and the New York Post experience, being humiliated on the cover of paper just really reinforced my commitment to this idea that we can live in a story that feels comfortable without having to, be overly persuaded by these like very simple narratives we have about people in the world, where instead we can tell our story with all of its complexity and its nuance, and just truly accept ourselves as we are. So it's a goal.
Because shame is a tool for control.
100%. So it really is this way of creating a sort of norm. And when we create a norm, and what it's kind of just define what's respectable, that's leaving a lot of people and a lot of experiences out. And
Yeah.
that is absolutely intentional.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So who should read this book, Melissa? Who's your target audience here?
I used to think it's just for women, and I get a lot of men who read it too, who really want to understand a partner's experience more, or who can really relate. And actually, some of the most astute interviews I got were from cisgender men who were just trying to live differently,
Hmm.
and are confronted with the same shame that women are assaulted with all the time. Because again, they're stepping out of the norm, right? So
Yeah.
there's this ways that shame is used as a weapon to keep people functioning, to maintain a status quo,
Yeah.
right? So anybody who really feels like they're, butting up against that, it can really help you investigate those parts of your story and your experience that you feel like you've made sense of, but maybe not yet, maybe not entirely. And you're going to read a ton of stories from other people, including mine, that make you, what I hear from readers at least, is that it really can make us feel less alone, to know that whatever we feel is, unique about us, it's not really that
Yeah.
unique.
And that's why we have to share our stories, right? That's the important part.
Right.
Yeah, I love that. And I was going to ask what the feedback is, and I'm not surprised that that's the feedback from the book. So before we let you go, I love to ask this question. If somebody is thinking about picking up your book and they're afraid to confront these things about themselves, what would you say to them about picking up your book?
I mean, I think people can just enjoy my story,
Mm.
and they can even judge the shit out of me if they choose to, or choose not to. Like, I think it's kind of fun to read it and find where our, like, even writing it, I was confronted with stories where I
Mm.
felt some judgment. And I'm like, "Oh, well, how do I reconcile that with my position on shame, which is that it's never positive. It can never improve us individually or societally." So, when I'm feeling judgment, I can meet that curiously, and there's lots of opportunities to judge the shit out of me and to judge the shit out of others, and then to kind of and then to rethink those judgments. And I
Right.
think that's the best feedback I get from readers, is people who really just had never thought of sex work before,
Yeah.
or had understood it in a very simple
Yeah.
way, or had sort of preconceived notions about that, or lots of other issues as well that people talk about in the book. And yeah, one of my favorite Goodreads comments is like, I don't really care, like, whatever, she was a sex worker, but she's really mean to her husband. I just loved.
That's
It's like,
funny. That's funny. Well, I am so excited. And what you've been through is going to help unlock other people's shame and tell their stories. And it's a ripple effect,
right.
so even the shitty things and being on the front of a newspaper will help other people. And
Yeah, you got to take the shitty things and turn
yeah,
them into something beautiful. And I feel like that's what I had the opportunity to do.
I love it. Well, I'm so excited to read it. Thank you for being here. Can you tell us the title one more time before we let you
The
go?
title is Shame on You: How to Be a Woman in the Age of Mortification.
And there certainly is a lot of mortification right now. We appreciate you, Melissa. We will put the link in the show notes. Thank you for being here. This is a great, great gift idea to get for your friend or your sister or yourself. And I'm psyched to buy my own copy and read it. And I think it allows us to have conversations that we may not have had before. And I think that that is the really important part of being a writer and being in culture. And just keep it up because we want to hear more from you.
Thank you.